And hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to my show, Get a Grip with Coach Elex. And this is going to be interesting because my better half, my other half, my partner in crime, my husband and co-host is going to join from the phone. So I'm hoping that we can get him in because he definitely wants to be. Oh, you're here. Yay!
I am here. I could hear you, and I'm on a road trip.
I love it. Well, I know today's guest is, a friend of yours, somebody that I met through Steven, and she's become a friend of mine and a mentor for me. But I know that you wanted to be part of this conversation, and we had some last minute urgent matters that needed to be taken care of, and you accomplished that, and you're on the phone. You should be, home hopefully before the show so that you can, not necessarily be on the line through the entire show. But anyways, how are you?
Well, I'm doing really well. I am in the car with two extremely handsome guys. They're very quiet. They're not saying much, but they're they're beautiful company. So for people that don't know, I had to rush over to the vets to get a certificate for the boys because we're going away and the boys are coming with us. And, there's only one, like the very, very specific category of vets or doctors that can sign this form. And whenever they're available, I've got to be there. And, of course, they tell me Friday at noon to be available. And it's like an hour away from the house. So, but I'm doing well. I mean, it was snowing on the way here to the vets, but it's raining now, and I should be back halfway, like 1:26, and I should be able to switch over. But there was no way, and you know what? I was missing this with my girl. That's gonna
Natalie. That's it. That's it. I just call your mother in with that said. Anyways, so for those of you, we are going to Puerto Rico. I've talked about this before because my mom, who's been with us for, my goodness, for a long time, ever since, I think it was October 2019. And then there were earthquakes in Puerto Rico and we couldn't go. And then there COVID hit and then we couldn't go. My mom is 95. And she has been waiting for this moment for a long, long, long time. And my mom was hospitalized recently, so, with congestive heart failure. And that became really stressful for me because I wanted to make sure that I can get my mom to go home. But one of the things that we had to compromise on is how long are you going to be there for? Right now, I don't feel comfortable that she stays by herself in Puerto Rico. She's always lived very independently, and she's a strong 95. She does not look 95, but, I just don't feel comfortable. She just got diagnosed with congestive heart failure, and we just, we're monitoring her health closely. So with that said, we had to figure out a way to go to Puerto Rico for a longer period of time that we normally do, and that meant 2 weeks. And we don't have sitters. We normally would have a sitter that comes and stay with the boys at our home, but we just moved. We don't have a sitter, so the only option was to take the boys. So this is going to be quite a spectacle. So we're traveling with my mom, 2 boys. And I'm not a fan of travel to begin with, so it'll be a spectacle. And then coming back, my mom's sister, it's going to come back with us. But having said that, it will be a fun spectacle. That's the intention that I'm creating. Right, Steven?
Felix, an adventure. Not a spectacle, an adventure. We're going to go on this incredible adventure with the whole family, so...
That's right.
It's very difficult for me to spend 2 weeks in Puerto Rico. I'm just sacrificing.
Oh yeah, I know. It's difficult for anyone. And by the way, we are working. We're taking our workload with us. We're taking our laptops. So we'll be doing. The good thing about the pandemic is that Zoom is a thing now. So everyone is very comfortable meeting via Zoom. So we'll be meeting via Zoom in Puerto Rico. and
Oh
that's
yeah,
how it's going to
I'm
work.
doing reading.
Yeah. So
I,
if you have an appointment with Stephen the Medium, do not despair. He'll be available, no matter where we are. So,
I sure will.
Stephen, today's show is going to be about self doubt, going from self doubt to self mastery. What do you think about that?
I think if you're able to accomplish that and be successful, there's no other greater element, I think, in one's life to get to.
That's very true. And here's what, when I think of self doubt, the things that come to my mind is that you're not alone. Everyone deals with self doubt. We may call it something else, but every single one of us deals with self doubt at one point or another. And self doubt is that mental habit of questioning our own judgment and worse, sometimes even our own worth. And again, it shows up in many, many ways. That said, self doubt can be healthy, because it gives us an opportunity to sort of question things that are appropriate to be questioned. But it also can be, and most of the time, I think we connect with self doubt as an unhealthy habit. And it's something that just doesn't go away. It's part of being a human being. But this show and the conversation we're going to have with the amazing Natalie Banks is about how to learn to reframe it in a way that empowers you. Again, doesn't go away. It's something that will be with us no matter what. So how can we give power to that conversation rather than feed it in a way that stops us and that derails us from living our best life? And by the way, if you saw the my story on Instagram or Facebook, I'm wearing, very appropriately so, a T-shirt that Stephen and I, when we were there last weekend filming for a documentary for Stephen, it says, "Live your truth." And I thought, what an appropriate T-shirt to put on for today, because my show is about living your truth, whatever that is for you. And guess what? When you have that commitment to living your truth, you have to be willing to step into that gap. You have to be willing to practice the art of getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. That's the only way that you're going to live your truth. And guess what? Self-doubt, it's going to show up. Whether you like it, whether you don't, whether you want it, whether you don't, self-doubt is going to be part of that process. It's going to be part of that journey. So this is a great opportunity to learn how to manage that, that process better. And then we can use self-doubt as a tool to motivate us, as a tool to keep us driven and to approach those things that really scare us and to approach them from a place of courage. And courage, if you've looked at the definition of courage, courage is doing something in the face of fear. Fear, it's not going to go away, but being courageous is moving forward in the face of fear. So again, this is going to be an amazing show. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, I love the living your truth, because I was just thinking, when I was coming out and before I was actually acknowledging that I was gay and just people around me, there were times that I could try to trick myself and say, I don't. That's something personal to me. I don't need to share that with anybody. But ultimately, when I did come out and really stepped into my truth, that really is when the heaviness left. And I don't care, as you mentioned, Elix, whoever you are, if you're not living your truth, you've got a heaviness that is not going to go away, and you're not going to fulfill your life's journey your life's objectives, goals. So I love that.
Yeah. And again, if you're listening to the show, our job is to call you out. Our job is to nudge you so that you can step into the gap. And again, it's about, I love the phrase getting comfortable with the uncomfortable because, when somebody says to me, well, it's uncomfortable, I don't know, I'm afraid. I always respond with, well, if it was comfortable, everyone would be doing it. So of course it's uncomfortable, but that's okay. You can practice the art of getting comfortable with the discomfort. And the more you practice that, the more you got that mastery of getting comfortable with the discomfort, the better, the more you're going to be able to do, the better, the bigger the game that you're going to take on. And that will create that opening for you to live your truth. And I hope that for those of you listening, that you begin to ask yourself, what is my truth? And begin to embrace what that is for you, because we all have that, by the way. Some of us just ignore it. Some of us put it, in the back burner. Some of us justify, why it's not possible, and have all kinds of reasons and validations for why that's not possible. But the truth is, it is possible, and you have your truth. And you gotta. The only way to live your truth is to get comfortable with the uncomfortable and embrace that self doubt. So when we come back, we're gonna have the amazing Natalie Banks, best-selling, award-winning author of 4 domestic suspense novels. She's an amazing human. Really, you do not want to miss this conversation, and we're going to talk about her journey going from self-doubt to self-mastery, and we'll be right back. And hello and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. Today we are talking about self-doubt, going from self-doubt to self-mastery. With me is the amazing Stephen the Medium. You there, Stephen?
I am here and present.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So let's the person that we have today is an amazing woman. She is the best-selling and award-winning author of 4 domestic novels. She's the recipient of the North Carolina Governor's Writing Award and the Amy Childs Writing Award. She's been named in Women's World magazine in their top 5 recommended books of 2020. Hello, that's an amazing accomplishment in and of itself. And if that's not enough, she's the founder of the Writing Champions Project, a movement to bring writers together for support, tips, and networking. She's also the assistant creative director for This Inspire Life magazine. My goodness, I'm already feeling self-doubt about this amazing guest. Natalie Banks has so much to bring to this conversation of self-doubt, and I know that you will be captivated by her story, by her perseverance, and by her accomplishments. So help me welcome the amazing Natalie Banks.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Natalie.
Hi, Natalie.
Welcome back
So
all
happy
the
to be
way
here.
from North Carolina. Hello, that's amazing. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just thrilled to be here.
Did you hear that introduction? That was like a 5-star introduction. Just saying.
I was like, are they talking about me? I've never heard it all together at once before.
That's you. That's you. And I'll be the first to say, Natalie, since we, had our call about just preparing for the show and what we're going to talk about, Lindsay and I and Stephen, we came up with so many questions because there was so much richness in the conversation. So I'll be the first one to say, I do not think 1 hour of you is enough. So I'm gonna ask you right now. Hopefully you're willing to come back at any time because we need more of you in this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. And absolutely, anytime I would love to.
So the first thing again, I have all kinds of questions, and we're going to talk about going from self-doubt to self-mastery, because that was something that sort of surfaced to the top, when we were chatting. But before I do that, there's something that was really clear to me in our conversation, the many conversations we've had. Writing is obviously your passion, Natalie. You've been quoted as saying that it is your gift to the world. And I love that. Did you know it was your passion from a young age?
I did. I kind of have a funny story to tell you about that. I've always been a big reader, always had a big imagination, but I didn't even consider being a writer at first, part of the lack of self-esteem, which we can go into later. But I was on an airplane, and I was flying by myself to Colorado, and I had just finished a book with an anticlimactic ending, and I had loved the characters with all of my heart. And when I finished the book, I was stunned, I was outraged, and I had absolutely nowhere to go with these emotions. So I did the only thing that I could think to do, and it was, I need to fix this. So I got out of my backpack, I got a little notebook out, and I rewrote the ending that I thought was more appropriate, with my apologies to the original author. But I was 12, and so I rewrote the ending, and then I read the book again, the ending of it, up until where I felt like the author had went astray, and then read my new ending that I had added. And when I closed the notebook, I knew I was a writer. It was just part of me from that moment on.
That's so amazing, Natalie, because as a coach, one of the things that I often invite my clients to do is to imagine what what their ending of their own game is going to look like, what
Oh,
it is that
wow.
they won in their life. So in essence, the exercise that you did is exactly what I would ask any of my clients to do. Start with the ending. What do you envision?
Wow.
What do you
I love
see?
that.
Yeah, so
So powerful.
it really is. So again, when you and I were chatting about you on the show, there were so many topics that we could have had great conversations about. But when you mentioned self doubt, and you just talked a little bit about that now, it really resonated with me. You know, what is your observation about self doubt? What comes to mind when you think of self doubt, Natalie?
Um, well, me self. I guess I'm going to speak properly since I'm a writer. I'm also from the South, so I have to constantly be correcting myself. But um, so a self doubt, and I have had our rounds with each other. I understood that it was an obstacle, and part of it for a long time, I just accepted that it was part of who I was, and it's kind of a complicated thing because the self doubt sounds like it's your own voice. You hear these things in your mind that tell you to be insecure about things. You're not worthy. You're not good enough. Nobody likes you, or my work isn't as good as somebody else. Oh, well, they did that, but I couldn't do that. Um, that in your mind sounds like it's coming from you.
Mm,
And what I learned, which I feel like was invaluable to my growth, was that voice was actually not Natalie's voice. That was the voices from my childhood. And these voices can take root in your mind in different ways. It could be you observing your parents, things that they said, and you take that on to yourself because we as children, that is our nature, is to follow our parents' lead. Because back in the day, we had to learn from our parents what plants were poisonous, run from the tiger, you need to drink water, you need to eat. Now, some of this is instinct, but a lot we learned from our parents. So that's instinct in us to learn how to live our lives through our parents. And if you are like me, having parents and other people in your life that spoke negative things over you, that even adds to the story. So if a parent says to you, you know, you're stupid, you're ugly, now suddenly that voice plays in your head and you say, I am stupid, I am ugly. And it sounds like it's your own voice, but in reality, it's this person. It could even be a playmate from school that you looked up to. You know, we're very impressionable as
yeah.
children, and our little brains are recording boxes. And so we keep these things, and they play on loop. I mean, most of the problems that we have as adults, most of the time can be traced and rooted back to something from childhood. I know
Mm,
that's a little bit of a controversial thought, but that's my opinion. And so once I started to learn that the voices that told me I was worthless or I was dumb, they weren't coming from me. So I started to grapple with, how do I deal with these voices that feel like me, they sound like me, but they're not me, because it's
mm,
feeling like it's me. So I started out saying to the voices, well, you're a liar.
mm,
And that didn't work. That didn't work because it was just ugliness meeting more ugliness is how it felt to me. So what I started saying is, okay, I hear you. I hear that you don't feel good enough to be a best-selling author. I hear what you're saying, and I understand why you're saying that. But that's not my truth. That's not my reality. My reality is that I have everything it takes to be a best-selling author. And I can't lie to you and tell you that that worked one time because that's not true. I mean, I
mm-hmm.
think self-doubt is something that plagues everybody. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't at some point, some way or form, have a little voice inside of them that says something to them that's not positive. But
Mm,
um, when you learn to work within your own the scout inside of you that wants to speak truth to you, your true self, and you learn to collaborate with them instead of the voice in your head that was grown from childhood. It gets easier. So I'm quicker to recognize that voice now if I feel insecure about, like, I'm just finishing up another novel, and the little doubts start popping in, and I'm like, no, I appreciate that you feel that way, but that's not my truth anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a daily practice, like anything.
No, no,
Important.
and you know what, you're pointing out to, actually, I've had shows in the past where we talked about defining moments, and what you speak to, you know, what you point out speaks to that. We all have defining moments, and those are those blueprint moments that are defining for the rest of our lives. And you're absolutely right. I argue that many of the defining moments that are really impactful for us start very early on, in our lives. And, that one moment, it's when we make that decision, we're not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not pretty enough. And then, say that starts at the age of 10, or sometimes even younger, then we use the rest of our lives to look for evidence that that is so. And that's what shows up. What I love about what you said, Natalie, is that when you dealt with your voices, as like, well, you're a liar, like, that wasn't helpful, because you said, I think you said that, it's a negative on a negative, right? and
Yeah.
and, and I think the value here is to remember, if that experience happened, for you as a young child, that's the young child still speaking. So
Mm-hmm.
there is a level of compassion that we got to understand. That young child doesn't mean to hold us back. That young child doesn't mean to stop us from living our best life. That young child is just being a young child, and they're doing everything they can because they think it's protecting us. So we're going to take a break, Natalie. When we come back, I'm curious to know if there's any specific defining moments that you remember that led to any conversation. I'm not good enough. I'm not worth it. So that our listeners perhaps can begin to understand that even the most successful people struggle with self-doubt. It is part of our lives as well. So we're going to take a break, Natalie. Stay with us. And when we come back, we will continue with Natalie Banks and the conversation going from self-doubt to self-mastery. We'll be right back. And hello and welcome back, everyone. Happy Friday. We are talking to Natalie Banks, best-selling and award-winning author. Natalie, welcome back.
Thank you.
So, Natalie, last our conversation, we talked about defining moments. You were talking about how that self-doubt for you shows up in those voices, right, that we all hear. You're not good enough, you're not this enough, you're not pretty enough, whatever that is, right? For me, not good enough was very prevalent throughout my whole childhood. What was that for you? And do you have any specific blueprint moment that you can go to and say, "Oh my God, it all started when I was like 8 years old"?
Well, unfortunately, but in some ways fortunately, because I feel like from the flames you come out stronger. I grew up hearing negative things spoken over me from the time I was very, very young, like a toddler. So, despite that, though, I think having grown up with a constant voice in the house that was never approving of me, I think it helped me to want to rise up. Like, because I think people can take things two different ways. There's different kinds of people, but I think it's never too late to climb out of that. But you can take it one of two ways. You can say, this person is speaking truth, or I don't want to be this person they're describing. And so even though I believed in this parent that was speaking these things over me, I did not want to be that person. So it grew something inside of me that made me want to prove them wrong, I guess, show them that I actually was of value. So I feel like it actually caused almost like a yo-yo thing inside of me, because I've always been very, very driven, but then there's also that voice inside of me that says, repeating those lines, those adjectives and labels that were placed on me. So I guess the blue, if you're asking about the blueprint, I would say, maybe 3 or 4 is when it started. And it was just a consistent theme throughout my life.
Wow. Natalie, and I have a book that I recommend to all my readers, all my clients. It's called The 3 Laws of Performance. That book talks about defining moments, and they have a chapter where they call the defining moments a time where we create a life sentence for ourselves, right? Like it's like we take ourselves to the court system, and we find ourselves guilty of that. You're guilty of not being good enough. You're guilty of not being worth it. You're guilty of whatever that is. But again, you're speaking to something really valuable, because defining moments, and those blueprints, and they can definitely be things that can hold us back, but in many, many ways, they become drivers. I love when you say, they make me rise up. Because that's exactly what the defining moment is. It becomes a driver. Like for me personally, I knew early on that I was going to prove to the world that I'm better than. Because my story is I'm not good enough. So I was a child that was so overaccomplished from an early on, and I was out to prove no matter what, I'm better than. The problem, and you speak to that, is that it's almost like, like the image that I can best use is the little hamster in that wheel. No matter how fast you go, you're just like in the same place, because that conversation comes back time and time again. So how do you check when you become committed to rising, right? How do you keep the self-doubt in check? What strategies do you use for yourself, Natalie?
Well, I think most importantly is self-care and self-love. I know that sounds cliche, But if you're not taking care of yourself, I mean, you're not going to be in any mental or physical condition to battle these voices, because, those voices do have a tendency to look for when we're weak, to find those openings. Like you said, it is the child inside of us. That was a great way of putting that, that they're speaking out. So as we become weaker, the child is going to get louder. So I think self-care is ultimate, and it is, I mean, having self-worth and believing in yourself is taking care of yourself, because, as you're married and you want to take care of your spouse. And if you didn't care about him, you wouldn't make any effort to make sure that he was okay or he was cared for. And that's, I think, a lot of us that struggle, immensely with self-doubt, self-care is something that gets pushed to the side, because especially for people like you and I that are overachievers because of this, that we just put ourselves to the side and we just keep pushing and pushing. So I say all that to say, really being cognizant of making sure I'm drinking water, eating right, and sleeping, so that I am my best version of myself, which helps me, to be able to grapple with the voices. And then another thing is to not entertain the self-doubt. It's very easy to go down that negative rabbit hole and say, when that voice pops in and says, well, what if they don't like your book? Well, I can say, thank you for your opinion. I appreciate that. I understand why you're afraid, but that's not what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on the beta readers that did like the book, and I like the book, and I'm proud of the book, and that's what matters.
Yeah,
if you allow yourself to go down the negative rabbit hole and say, oh, what if they don't like the book? Well, I did put that one thing in there that I was worried about, and oh, my character did say this, and that might not be politically correct, and oh my goodness, what if the people don't enjoy the ending? You go down that negative rabbit hole. It's very difficult to climb out. So I think my number one piece of advice would be, don't go there. When that self-doubt comes up, you give it your truth of that, whatever it is. I'm saying, well, I love that book and I'm proud of it. And then that's it.
Don't feed it.
Distract yourself. Yep. Don't feed the fear.
Yeah. And you talked about my wonderful husband, Stephen the Medium. Stephen, I'm hoping that you're back with us. Do you have any questions for Natalie?
I have never left. I'm just in awe. And one on a side note, when you introduced her, what you forgot was how darling she is. Beautiful inside and out. I'm just saying, Natalie.
That goes without saying.
Natalie, you know what I love? I love the fact that you bring up that we all have that self-doubt. And I think for so many people listening now and that are going to listen to the recording, they're going to be validated with that, saying, oh my God, so even this amazing writer has self-doubt. It's just, I think it just goes so long with just validating people and maybe giving them a different perspective to acknowledge it and then deal with it and move on. So, I mean, everything you have given and talked about is just, I'm just in awe of your story.
Yeah. And Natalie, one thing that you said that one of my friends, he's an NBA champion basketball player for the Celtics. He's Brian Scalabrine. We know him at Scal or the Y Mamba. One piece of advice that he shared with me that you just spoke about it also is he said to me, don't ever give value to feedback, whether positive or negative, unless it comes from somebody who has a stake in your success. So people have opinions, right? So even if somebody says I love your book, you can be gracious and say thank you and acknowledge that, but don't put any weight to anything, good or bad, unless it comes from someone who has a stake in your success. And I tell you, Natalie, I think of that, and you spoke about it, because the truth is we could all go down that rabbit hole. Oh my God, did I sound good? Oh my God. Did I say the right thing? Oh my God. When I do my stories on Instagram, oh my God, I just screwed up. And I'm like, you know what? So what? So
Yes.
what?
Yes.
Right?
There's so much power in that and freedom. It feels good.
Yeah. So Natalie, we're about to take a break. So let's take a break. Stay with us, and when we come back, we will continue with the conversation, going from self doubt to self mastery. We'll share some tips that I have to free yourself, and I want to hear your feedback. And we'll just continue with the conversation, and we'll be right back. And if you want to call and join the conversation, 508-222-1320. And hello and welcome back. Happy Friday, everyone. We are having a wonderful conversation with a best-selling author and award-winning author, novelist Natalie Banks. Natalie, my show, it's called Get a Grip with Coach Elex. So one question in the context of the conversation we're having, I'm curious to hear from you. What does getting a grip in life, in success, in your business means to you?
Well, I would take that as just kind of being your hand and saying, the unwillingness to give up on yourself, whether you're, pursuing, as an entrepreneur or like me, a novelist or an artist, a musician, even, women at home taking care of their homes, whatever it is that you want to be your best version of yourself at, is just digging your toes in the sand and being unwilling to give up on yourself and make whatever it is that you're dreaming of happen for yourself.
I love that. When I think of Get a Grip, I always say to myself, it's about getting a hold of what it is that you love, what it is that you want. And again, I don't know if you heard when I said earlier that I'm wearing a shirt that says "Live Your Truth," and I thought it was a perfect T-shirt to put on for today's show and talking to you, because this conversation is about living our truth, right?
Yes.
So
and the key word being truth.
The key word being truth, exactly. Stephen, I just want to make sure if you're with us, because I know you've been transitioning. So, you still with us?
Oh, I've been in a long transition. I'm still here, trying to get on and switch over, and I am having a lot of issues. But I can hear.
That's okay.
This has been a great interview.
That's okay. So long you're with us, that's all that matters. So Natalie, there's I have a few things, because I always want to leave our listeners with, a go-to, a to-do, right? Something that will help them go from, that self-doubt to self-mastery. So there's ways that we can free ourselves from self-doubt. So I'm gonna list what I have, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say. So chime in, and we'll wrap it, session here. So the first thing is embrace it, because what we resist persist. What would you say about that?
I think that's true, because whatever we focus on is what we actually draw into our lives. I always tell people, you don't get what you want, you get what you are. So I think embracing it and recognizing that that's a weakness or something that was spoken of us that's not true, and acknowledging it is fantastic. And one of the things that I think is a great exercise to combat that is to actually write it down. If you say, well, I'm not good enough, so write that down. And then I want you to make a list of 5 ways where you can prove that that's not true. List 5 things that you're amazing at, because everybody can come up with 5 things they're amazing at. And that's how you combat it, because you acknowledge, okay, I see you, so now let's start proving that wrong.
Fabulous. By the way, that speaks to number 2, be skeptical of your thoughts. They are not reality.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, because you as we said earlier, the voice of the child passed, and so those things are not being said over you anymore. They're just echoes. I always say it's like the little ghosts of things said in the past, or little echoes of things that were said in the past. Just because you can still hear them doesn't mean it's happening right now.
Yeah. Number 3, give your inner critic a name. Personally, I call my inner critic young Elix, because I know it comes from a very young part of my life. 6 years old. So that's who my inner critic becomes. And what that does for me, Natalie, it allows me to have self-compassion for my inner critic. What do you think about that?
Oh, I got goosebumps. Like, that's fantastic. I think I'm going to name mine Little Natalie, because I think that really does help, because now it's not going to be my parents' voice anymore. It's going to be the little girl that I want to rescue. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. The number, let's see, another one is cultivate your sense of purpose. Out of, I'll compete the self-doubt with a strong self of purpose. Again, when I just talked to you about my T-shirt, Live Your Truth, and you said emphasis on truth, right? That to me speaks purpose. And when we focus on purpose, I personally feel it just clears the way for anything we want. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, because I think especially people like us that came from a perspective of being damaged, our goal is to want to fulfill this thing. It's almost, I call it the hero's journey. I think I got that from a little bit because I was very influenced by Paulo Coelho with his, The Alchemist. And I really feel like I'm fulfilling my own hero's journey, and, I feel fulfilled by it. So if someone out there, they're trying to do something that they don't feel my Southern accent, they don't feel fulfilled, then they're never going to have that sense of purpose, like you said. So if they feel like doing X, Y, Z is going to make them successful, famous, whatever it is they're going for, but they don't feel fulfilled by that, that's not their sense of purpose. They have to be going after something that fills them up.
Yeah.
So, yes, I love it.
Fabulous. Now, the other one, this is a biggie. I actually challenge people with this one. Spend time with people who believe in you. And Jim Rohn famously claimed that quote, you are the average of the 5 people who that you spend the most time with. Think about that. That's actually a really challenging thought. We become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So you know what? I am not wasting time with naysayers, negative people. That's one thing. Stephen and I talk about that all the time. If you come to the conversation, to our space with negativity, we just we keep the distance because you interrupt our space.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. And I know a lot of people out there maybe they're stuck in situations with people that are possibly toxic or negative. Maybe they live with that person and they can't get out of there right now. So what I would suggest is to listen to your radio show, maybe work with you as a coach, follow people on social media that are positive and think like you do. Because, the beautiful, glorious thing about the internet is we can be surrounded by people that are like-minded in any hour of the day. So I think that's fantastic. And then, people, they're stuck, find other outlets, find, online friends that think like you.
Well, thank you, Natalie. The next one I have you spoke about, which is practice self-compassion. I think that's most important in this conversation. If you don't embrace self-compassion towards yourself, then you're just almost like you become a bully of your bullied. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So practice self-compassion is just really important. And the last one that I have, for me, this is a must. I do this every day. Stephen and I practice this every day. It's a self-gratitude. Whether, we do a dairy, I speak it. I speak self-gratitude every day. I have a practice every single day. I talk about what I'm grateful for. And it could be the air, the trees, the birds, the animals, the water, the ocean. It could be anything. But there's so much to be grateful for. What do you think about that, Natalie?
Oh, absolutely. I think gratitude is the power behind everything. If you're not grateful for the beautiful things around you, how can you be grateful for the things that you're working for? Mm-hmm. I think that it empowers us in so many ways. I mean, there's health benefits, there's mental benefits, there's spiritual benefits. So, yeah, I'm absolutely on board with the gratitude path.
So, Mr. Stephen the Medium, tell us, what do you think about this list of ways to free ourselves from self-doubt? Anything else that you would add?
No, I love what Natalie just said. That is very powerful. There's so many things that were powerful. But Natalie, when you just said if you're not grateful for the things around you or what you have, how can you be grateful for your objectives or your goals? And that's a statement, Natalie, and thank you for saying that you sort of just sit with. And when it sinks in, it's like a light bulb moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm grateful to you, Natalie, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I'm grateful for you, both of you, Elix and Stephen, and all the listeners taking the time to listen to us talk today.
Yeah, Natalie, again, Stephen introduced Natalie to me. Natalie has been a good friend of Stephen. And Natalie, I'm in the process of writing my book. And Natalie has selflessly been a mentor and, been so helpful in a process that for somebody like me is very complex. And I am so, so, so grateful that you are part of our lives. And I couldn't thank you enough, Natalie.
Oh, well, that gratitude goes both ways, Elix. I just love both of you, and I'm so grateful that we became family because that's, they say you can't choose your family, but I have to counter that.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, at the end of the day, this is what I want to leave our listeners with. Self-doubt is a habit, nothing more, nothing less. And regardless of where it came from, you can work to free yourself from chronic self-doubt by building better habits. And one of those habits should be to read Natalie's books, novels, because they will absolutely put you in a better place. Natalie, how do our listeners connect? How can they connect with you?
Well, I'm on Instagram at official Natalie Banks. I also have a website. It's nataliebanks.net. And if you want to send me an email or get in touch with me, you can reach out to me on Instagram, or you can send me an email at nataliebanksnovels@gmail.com.
And all your books are on Amazon, and they can also look for the Writing Champions Project. Those of you who are listening who want to write their book, you should look into that and, check Natalie out and connect with Natalie.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
Well, darling, thank you so much for your time, for your attention. I know I am beyond thrilled, and I know Stephen is too. And we are so thankful that you took the time. And we really need to have you back because there's much, much, much more that we could be talking about.
Well, I would absolutely be honored to come back. And thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute honor. Truly, it was.
Beautiful. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, Natalie. Love you.
Thank you, Stephen. Love you.
Love you too.
Bye-bye.
And we've come to the end of the hour. Mr. Stephen the Medium, do you have any announcements that you need to make regarding your upcoming shows?
Yo, that was an amazing interview. Yes, I have my first live in-person event coming up June 6th at the Sagamore Inn. It should be up and running for tickets to be purchased, I think, Sunday or Monday. I think Lindsay said Monday, so hopefully ASAP. So check it out because we've all been waiting to be in person, and it's going to be an amazing event with me not only reading people but also giving notes. And you can find me by Stephen the Medium everywhere.
And you can find me at Coach Elex. If you've not connected with me, you should be connected with me because I'm all about helping you live your truth, whatever that is for you. So thank you for joining us. As a reminder, we will not be live. My show will not be live for the next 3 weeks because we'll be away. But we are going to rerun 3 of my very best shows. So tune in because you're going to have some amazing shows, including Natalie Banks' interview today. So we're going to rerun that as well. And as always, if you need anything, just find me at Coach Elex. And thank you again for your time and your attention. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend, everyone.
Thanks, Mark.